Hey, what's going on? It has been a bit. A lot of stuff seems to be going on constantly. I'm sure I will be covering a variety of things that have started to take place recently and kind of touch on them as it develops more. But this one has been the big talk of the week. So, what I'm going to talk about today is the Trump administration's Signal chat scandal, also known as Signalgate. If you have paid any attention to the media at all recently, you've probably heard of it or at least seen memes for it between the regular media, social media, and whatnot. But what Signal Chat is it is like a group chat app that has end-to-end encryption, and you can set it to delete messages after a certain amount of time to just like vanish into thin air, basically. Which is one of the problems with the government, who is not supposed to use Signal Chat for government-affiliated reasons, is because they're supposed to be able to document and have record of certain plans and conversations between the administration. So that's already one knock against it. But I will just kind of jump right into the story then. And what happened? So what happened is um, Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, formed a group on Signal Chat. In this group was not only many important people from the Trump administration. We have J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, Steve Witkoff, Stephen Miller, Susie Wiles, John Ratcliffe, and Marco Rubio. Also added was Jeffrey Goldberg, the Atlantic editor-in-chief. So that's where things get funky. He originally thought he was getting pranked, basically, but he just stayed in the group because he thought, oh, maybe they're actually gonna, report on some of the questions that I've been asking or been interested in, and it's an opportunity for me to, because he's kind of a more left-wing Democratic journalist. He thought, oh, maybe it's them like opening up to me type thing. So he just stayed, or he thought he was getting pranked, basically. First of all, so then it was kind of made a big deal when he released his first article with some of the details of the chat. And what happened is you had uh, Congress pull together to do investigation of it. Um, and here you can see White House Intelligence Committee hearing on global security threats. They did a lot of talking about it. But that's how it ended up. Oh, I can make my picture smaller, sorry. So I'll go on over some of that. And it was a big deal. It was a two-day event at least that they talked about it, and it's going to continue to be investigated. But basically, you had several of these people kind of downplay what happened after the first article was released by Jeffrey Goldberg. So I'm going to start getting into some of that now. But before I do, so when this first came out and leaked, there was a survey of about 6,000 U.S. adults, okay? And I'm bringing this survey up because you can see that a lot of people thought it was a serious problem and a serious breach of confidential or supposed to be secret information regarding military action against the Houthis in Yemen. That's kind of the whole basis of it, aside from Jeffrey Goldberg just already getting invited randomly into a Trump administration group chat on an app that they aren't supposed to have government conversations with, right? So now I'm getting into this, the people who had heard about Signal Leak, how they felt about it. So US adults, you're looking at almost 75%. So like 3 out of 4 people thought it was a serious problem. Democrats, obviously, it's the Trump administration, thought it was more serious. Independents, 72%. Republicans, even 60% of Republicans. Now I'm bringing up this now because it was conducted like right away after it started breaking and the information started coming out. And why am I bringing it up that it was actually earlier rather than later? Well, this number is undoubtedly going to go down. And that's not a good thing because Republicans do care about it. And there are a lot of Republicans in Congress that are understanding that this is a big deal. And in the committee hearing on global security threats that are worried about it, there's lots of current military that are upset about it, lots of former military that are upset about it, current intelligence officers, former intelligence officers. It is a big deal to the vast majority of people. That's kind of my point with this. Even Republicans that were interviewed now, it was a big deal to them. Now, I'm saying the date matters because what happens is Fox News, right wing social media personalities, what have you, social media, and the a lot of my other links here that are going to come up is they're going to try and downplay it as not being that serious. And they're going to push as hard as they can to downplay it as hard as they can. And this number is going to fade because, believe it or not, sorry, Republicans, especially MAGA Republicans, many of you just buy the propaganda. Like, you might feel strongly about it because you should, but they're going to convince you not to. And it's bullshit because this is a big deal and you should care about it. It's especially a big deal because if you remember Hillary Clinton's private email server, how big of a deal that was to all Republicans. Uh, this is in the same vein, if not even potentially slightly worse, um, because of how many other regulations, laws, executive orders, what have you, that was broken with this military code of conduct. Like this is a bigger deal than the classified documents type thing with Trump probably, and Biden in his garage, and so on. So now that you have like an idea of what it is, we're gonna jump right into Pete Hegseth. This is after day one when the first article got released. This is what he had to say about it.
Talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, 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 or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops.
So what he did there is, instead of actually comment on the group chat being released and the story, he decided to attack the editor, the guy who was mistakenly added to the group, the guy who reached out to the White House, reached out to Pete Hegseth, reached out to multiple administration officials about it prior to even releasing the first article. He made sure when he released the first article that there wasn't sensitive information in it. Like, he did his part to say, hey, this problem occurred, without giving away too much, without endangering anybody, without, showcasing how big of a deal it was. But you had people attack him like this. You had people deny it during the first House Intelligence Committee hearing, many of which kind of changed their tune or said they didn't recall at the time for the first one. But that is basically the route they chose. Rather than take responsibility or say, yes, it was a screw up, they opted to either play it off like it wasn't a big deal or attack the guy who got invited to the group chat for a national security based group chat, a military strike based group chat, a government administration group chat. They're blaming him. He didn't invite himself. Um, Mike Waltz invited him to the group. He added him to the group. The National Security Advisor added him to the group. A guy that Pete Hegseth and others have tried to discredit and talk about how bad he is, he got added to their very important private group. So alone, the fact that they don't like him, they don't trust him, they don't want the public to believe him, but he got invited to their private group, shows how big of a failure it is on a national security, a military security level, that somebody they don't like and don't trust was added to the group without anyone realizing it. Nobody realized it until he contacted them after he had left the group, contacted them with, hey, I wasn't supposed to be here, obviously. You guys are talking about some serious stuff. But they choose to attack him. So now I'm just going to get into the actual talk for it, okay? Because, like I said, you've probably seen some of it, but it was definitely a more serious deal than they tried to play it. A lot of this stuff isn't that important. They're talking about, so here they're saying high side inboxes with that. That's like the private stuff. That's like the high level government security stuff. Um, this is like he's just saying, this is a notification. This is where I want to talk about stuff, right? But they're talking about the area that the Houthis were attacking and what they were going to do about it, basically. They're saying it's not time sensitive. Israeli will likely take strikes, so on. But here they start talking like military actions, right? We are mobilizing assets to support now, but a delay would not negatively impact us. um, Hegseth says, I understand your concerns and fully support you raising those concerns with President of the United States, which is the other big problem here, right? So this is a group chat of the Trump administration. Donald Trump is not part of this group chat. He is not getting this information. I mean, they might relay it to him, but he's not directly involved, which already should be like, oh, is Trump like actually doing anything? Some of the stuff they're talking about makes it sound like he might not like that. Oh, he'll be okay with it because we're going to do what he wants. So that's kind of going. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which we need to stay focused. Biden failed and Iran funded them. Okay? Waiting months and weeks doesn't matter. We're prepared to execute now if I can get the final go. So we keep going. Michael Watts brings up the trade figures and the effect that it'll have, um, how much of it's Europe trading through there. So far, it's like somewhat, um, maybe this shouldn't be public. Some of it's like it's whatever, right? And here we get them, the Trump administration, publicly shitting on Europe. It's so great. Pete, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing out Europe again. Let's just make sure our messaging is tight here. And if there are things we can do up front to minimize risk to Saudi oil facilities, we should do it. They gotta make sure that they keep their big money from their Saudi friends okay during all this, of course. Pete Hegg says, VP, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. Yeah, Europe definitely had access to this too, and they're not happy about it after already not being happy with our administration. So another big ol' thumbs up for U.S. relations with our allies, by the way. But Mike is correct. We're the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger, aka wealthy military nation, who can do this. Nobody else is close. Question is timing, but they'll give 24 hours for the president to decide, basically, is what he's saying. Stephen Miller says that the president was clear, green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. We also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement. So the U.S. is deciding they are, in fact, doing this military strike on the Houthis. It is their decision. They're enacting it. But they want to make sure that Europe and Egypt are paying them back for it. What if they don't pay us back, basically? If the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be further economic gain. So basically, they're talking about, like, how can we extract wealth from Europe for us doing something that we want to do? But if you've paid attention to Trump lately and all these other guys, Europe takes advantage of us. Even though it's us, the U.S. administration, making this decision and saying, yeah, they're going to pay us for doing this because we're doing them a favor. Agree. All right, here is where we get into the confidential type stuff that should be classified, or at the least should not be public to a reporter at the time. Team update. Time now, 11:44. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. So this is the start. This is the start of the mission. We have not bombed them yet. This is literally like live updates going on. 12:15. F-18s launch first strike package. Military equipment. What they're using to do the launches. Trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so he should be on time. Also, strike drones launch. MQ-9s, more military equipment. More F-18s launch, second strike package, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launch. I will say a prayer for our victory, says J.D. Vance. So Pete Hegseth gives you that we are starting. These are the times that you can expect things to happen. Okay? A reporter who these people don't like is in this chat. And that they call him untrustworthy. If he was truly untrustworthy, or if there was a more untrustworthy reporter, or if somebody else had access to this group chat, which is very possible because the government has warned that signal chats aren't the safest because it's a public app, or these members of this administration, you're not allowed to have this on your government phone, by the way. So these are the private phones that they're carrying. And one of, I believe it's Witkoff, was in Russia at the time that these text messages are going through, by the way. Say a prayer for our victory. VP, building collapse, had multiple positive ID. Pete, Gorilla, the IC, amazing job. Typing too fast, first target, their top missile guy. We had positive ID of him walking into his girlfriend's building, and it has now collapsed. Good job, Pete and your team. The team in Mal did a good job as well. Great job. CENTCOM is on point. Great job. So this is them basically just celebrating after it happened, right? So here you can see more there, like who was all in it, basically. All right. So there you have it. That was definitely stuff that the public should not have access to, especially ahead of time. That um, the terrorist organization could potentially get if the group chat wasn't secure ahead of time. It would endanger lives. It would endanger the mission. It was not a smart thing to do. Make myself just a hair smaller again. And now I'm going to play some clips from the House Intelligence Committee hearing. This I might talk about a little bit of it in between, but for the most part, I can just play the clips because they kind of go over it pretty well, I feel like. And you can see the answers that these top officials in the Trump administration have to say.
Director Gabbard, you've reasserted that there was no classified information. I think we can all agree that that information shouldn't have been out there. But let me ask you this. Are you familiar with the ODNI's classification guidance?
I'm familiar
I've
with
actually
it.
got a copy right here. If I read you a part of that guidance, I wonder if you could tell me what the level of classification indicated is. I'm reading from your classification guidance. And the criteria is information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing an attack. Do you recall what your own guidance would suggest that that be classified?
I don't have the specifics in front of me, but it would point to what was shared would fall under the DoD's classification system and the Secretary of Defense's authority.
So let me help you because there's a very clear answer.
And what is not.
You don't, I guess you don't have it, but information providing, this is the ODNI guidance, information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing an attack should be classified as top secret. Do you disagree with that?
I don't disagree with that. I just point out that the DoD classification guidance is separate from the ODNI's classification guidance.
Do you think it would be materially different?
Ultimately, the Secretary of Defense holds the authority to classify or declassify.
Do you think it's likely that DoD guidance is materially different from what I just read?
I haven't reviewed the DoD guidance, so I can't comment.
If you want to get your name, phone number, and
Advertisement,
address
guys.
off the internet, but want to handle the
Unfortunate.
removals yourself,
Director Gabbard, a lot of this suggests sort of a lack of sobriety. When there's punch emojis and fire emojis, it's a lack of sobriety. I don't mean that literally. But I have one last question for you because I think people really listen to what you have to say. You, on March 15th, as DNI, retweeted a post from Ian Miles Chong, who is listed on RT, that's Russia Today's website, as, quote, a political and cultural commentator who has contributed content to RT since at least 2022. Director Gabbard, do you think that it's responsible for you as head of the intelligence community and the principal presidential intelligence advisor to retweet posts from individuals affiliated with Russian state media?
That retweet came from my personal account, and I would have to go back to look at the substance of the tweet.
Can I, just so that we don't have a lack of confusion amongst our allies and enemies and us, can I act perhaps that you not think that you should be saying one thing on your personal account than you say officially?
I maintain my First Amendment rights to be able to express my own personal views on different issues.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields now.
The last part, I guess, wasn't truly relevant, but it gives you kind of an idea, for those of you who don't know Tulsi Gabbard, a little bit more about her, which, by the way, this is the second day hearing. The first day hearing, a lot of these, her and Radcliffe miraculously couldn't remember a lot of the things that were in the group chat, right? And so this is day two, when the full group chat, everybody had time to read it. Like the first day, they denied, that there were weapon systems mentioned, or times mentioned, or targets mentioned. And then, as you saw from me reading to you previously, those things were happening, right? All right, so I'm going to skip ahead to the next one that I feel is relevant. Okay.
together in 2013. And Cash, you and I was serving on the Intelligence Committee when you worked on the Intelligence Committee. And John, you and I are both from Texas, and we both served together on the Intelligence Committee. The idea that this information, if it was presented to our committee, would not be classified, y'all know is a lie. That's ridiculous. I've seen things much less sensitive be presented to us with high classification. And to say that it isn't is a lie to the country. I want to ask the generals now. The NSA is principally in charge of intercepting things like signals intelligence from other countries. General, I want to ask you, if your organization, your agency, intercepted something like this from Russia or China or some other country, would you consider this classified information?
Representative, we would be classifying based off of our sources and methods. So those would be the things that, in terms of how we process, how we would be able to obtain the information, and how we'd report it,
Sure.
we would classify based off of our source and method.
So if you knew that the Secretary of Defense and the National Security Advisor of Russia or China and the head of the Foreign Ministry and all of the folks who were associated with that signal chain, if you intercepted that information, General, would you consider it classified?
So it would be classified based off of our collection.
So the NSA would classify it, would
Based off
determine it as
of
classified.
the protection of our own source and method, not necessarily based off the content, but how we collected that information.
But it would be classified.
Well, we certainly wouldn't be
The answer is
collecting
yes.
on a U.S.
The answer is
person
yes.
conversation.
No, I understand. I'm
We're
saying if you did your job and collected it from the Russian Foreign Ministry and the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of Defense and the President's Chief Advisor, there is no way, having sat on this committee for 9 years, that somebody would come in with that information and give us something that says, unclassified, you can walk out of this room with this information and give it to whomever you want. You know, with all respect, you and I worked on the committee at the same time. Tulsi, you and I came in together. I've never had an issue of beef with you. John, you and I are both from Texas. Y'all know that's a lie. It's a lie to the
I like how he responds to John with, "You and I are both from Texas." Like, he definitely doesn't call him his friend or his, like, colleague or anything like that. I don't think he liked John very much. Sorry.
country. I want to ask about the Alien Enemies Act really quick while I have time.
This isn't really relevant to the topic, but I do want to play this because this is honestly a very, very big deal. A judge does currently have this shut down, which in my opinion is good, but depending on where this goes, I might make a video on it as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and play his question here.
The President has used the Alien Enemies Act, a wartime authority last used to detain German and Japanese nationals during World War II, to summarily deport people accused of being members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Agua. To invoke this law, the President must demonstrate that the United States is under invasion by a foreign nation or government. They have alleged that we are under invasion by the Venezuelan government. The idea that we are at war with Venezuela would come as a surprise to most Americans. The unclassified version of the annual threat assessment the intelligence community just released makes no mention of any invasion or war that we are fighting with the nation of Venezuela. You would think our nation being at war would merit at least a small reference in this threat assessment. And Director Ratcliffe, does the intelligence community assess that we are currently at war or being invaded by the nation of Venezuela?
We have no assessment that says that.
Thank you. In invoking the law, the President alleged that Tren de Agua is, quote, undertaking hostile actions against the U.S. at the direction, clandestine or otherwise, of the Maduro regime in Venezuela. Director Gabbard, does the intelligence community assess that the Venezuelan government is directing Tren de Agua's hostile actions against the United States?
There are varied assessments that came from different intelligence community elements. I'll defer to Director Patel to speak specifically to the FBI assessment.
But let me ask you, so you're saying there are conflicting assessments that have come from the IC?
That's correct.
All right, so for that one, like I said, it's not really related to the Signal chat, but Trump passing that executive order, which a judge did stop, that basically allows the deportation to a very rough prison in El Salvador of suspected gang members, multiple of which have actually very powerful news articles with decent sources saying that some people who were sent were certainly not associated with the gangs. And the fact that they were sent there against the judge's orders is a big deal. But again, it might be a future video. I also kind of need to see how that continues to play out. It is currently stopped. Hopefully it remains that way because as you saw there, we are not at war. That executive order should not be able to be in place in the first place. And it is affecting people who are not even related to the gangs. Right, moving on to the next part of this.
Thank you to our witnesses for coming. Thank you for your service. Director Gabbard, you said no classified information was included in the signal chat, correct?
That's correct.
And President Trump also said there was no classified information in the signal chat. And Secretary Hegseth said nobody was texting war plans. There was absolutely no classified info in that chat. Lieutenant General Cruz, I'd like to talk to you about a couple things real quick. Executive Order 13526, Section 1.4a. This is the Trump administration's executive order with regard to classified information. It says, information shall be classified if its unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause damage to national security, including military plans, weapons systems, or operations. You don't disagree that that's accurately quoted, right?
That's an accurate quote from the executive order.
And DOD 5200.01, this is the DOD's manual on classification, says, quote, information shall be classified if its unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause describable damage to national security. This includes military plans, weapon systems, or operations. You don't disagree that I quoted that accurately, right?
That's also an accurate quote.
Can I show you I'd like to show you the text that Secretary Hegseth actually published to the world. Now, Lieutenant General Cruz, as Ranking Member Himes said, it says, time now, weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM we are a go for mission launch. Then it says at 12:15 Eastern, F-18s launch first strike package. F-18s are military systems, correct? Weapon systems.
They are.
Okay. 13:45, trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch, MQ-9s. MQ-9s is a weapon system, correct?
They are.
Okay. I think applying the executive order as well as the DOD manual to this fact pattern, we clearly have weapon systems that have been identified. That is classified information. Now, the reason why it's important that this information not be disclosed is that we don't want the adversaries to know what's about to happen, right, sir?
Well, I would draw a small distinction there. You referenced and asked if that platform, those two platforms are weapon systems. They are, but those terms are used all across the globe in a lot of contexts. So it's really about how they're used in the context of this particular document. I just want to clarify that the use of those terms,
I understand.
Yeah.
In this situation, those are operational details.
They are operational details, but again, as you quoted the DOD instruction, it's about operations. So as you further go down into what are the operational details, I think as we had a discussion yesterday, the important aspect, I think all of us are very familiar.
This is classified information. This is classified information. It's a weapon system as well as sequence of strikes as well as details about the operations. And so I think that just piggybacking off of what some other members have said, using the DOD's manual as well as the executive order in operation today with the Trump administration, this text message is clearly classified information. Secretary Hegseth has disclosed military plans as well as classified information. He needs to resign immediately. He needs to resign immediately, and a full investigation needs to be undertaken with regard to whether other similar signal chats are occurring in this administration. I'd like to turn my attention to another topic. Director Patel, according to the...
All right. Moving on again. By the way, Patel, if you didn't notice on my things I showed earlier, he was not involved in it. So his questions are other things related to the House Intelligence Committee's hearing on global security threats. All right, moving on to the last one that I have for this. Sorry, it is a little long, but I do feel like it's quite important. Like I said, this is actually a very, very big deal with how much press and resources things like Hillary Clinton's emails got, the classified documents for both Trump and Biden's garage got. This is, like I said, probably beyond that level. So I'm just going to keep going, and then I'll discuss it a little further.
Because there's risk to that app.
There are.
Okay.
Hold on,
General Cruz,
sorry.
Out an advisory on how to use the Signal app and other encrypted applications, because we do encourage our employees and their families to use encrypted.
because there's risk to that app.
There are.
Okay. General Cruz, DOD also issued a warning about vulnerabilities to the Signal app recently, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Director Gabbard, you were on this Signal text chain in question, correct?
Yes.
As was Mr. Witkoff, the administration's lead negotiator with the Russians, correct?
Yes.
And at the time, Mr. Witkoff was actually in Russia during this chat discussion, was he not?
I was not aware of that.
Was he on his personal phone at the time?
I don't know.
Well, it's my understanding that he was indeed in Russia. Director Gabbard, you were also traveling during this discussion, correct?
Yes.
And where were you?
I was traveling through the Asia-Pacific region. I don't recall which country I was in at that time.
You don't remember the country?
I'd have to go back and look at the schedule.
Director Gabbard, I want to direct your attention again to the text chain where it says, just confirmed with CENTCOM, we are a go for mission launch. Does that indicate to you that there is about to be a military operation?
Yes.
Director Gabbard, earlier in this hearing, we heard about the DOD's classification standards. I want to now turn my attention to your classification standards. You're the Director of National Intelligence. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence classification guide says, quote, information providing indication or advance warning that the U.S. or its allies are preparing for an attack, end quote, is to be classified as top secret. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Director Gabbard, have the Houthis indicated an ability to shoot down American aircraft?
Yes.
They have in fact done so, haven't they?
Yes.
Including MQ-9 Reapers, haven't they?
That's correct.
And that was one of the systems used in the attack recently that's the subject of this discussion, is it not?
Correct.
General Cruz, are you familiar with this system?
I'm not wearing my glasses at the moment, but...
Well, I'll help you out. This is an SA-3 anti-aircraft system.
Correct.
Are you familiar with this next system?
I am.
What is it?
I'm going to have to ask you.
It's an SA-6.
I'm going to guess that
This is also an advanced anti-aircraft system, is it not?
it is. It was used widely in the Balkans in the 90s, correct?
And the Houthis also have this system, don't they?
They certainly do.
And they've employed it against our aircraft, have they not?
They have attempted to, correct.
I mean, he's going to go on it a little bit more, but I mean, it's so obvious what he's pointing out, right? If the wrong person was in that group chat, or one of those people in that public group chat, it was intercepted, whatever, the Houthis have these weapon systems. They could have endangered the lives of our military. They could have counterattacked the operation, could have shot it down. They have the capabilities if they know times and potential places that strikes are about to happen, which that text chain did reveal. Continuing.
I spent my life in service to this country. I deployed 3 times to combat in service to this nation. I learned in that time in service that responsibility is core to leadership. You accept responsibility when things go wrong. You admit mistakes. You set the standard from the very top. It is completely outrageous to me that administration officials come before us today with impunity, no acceptance of responsibility, excuse after excuse after excuse, while we send our men and women downrange to do incredibly difficult, incredibly dangerous things on our behalf. And yet, nobody is willing to come to us and say this was wrong. This was a breach of security and we won't do it again. It is outrageous and it is a leadership failure, and that's why Secretary Hegseth, who undoubtedly transmitted classified, sensitive operational information via this chain, must resign immediately. There can be no fixes, there can be no corrections until there is accountability, and I'm calling on the administration to move forward with accountability. I yield back.
Gentlemen, yield.
All right, so that's kind of all. A lot of the other stuff that I listened to from it was kind of repeats or not a serious discussion. But I'm going to kind of go into some of the reactions and the downplaying that certain Republicans or people in the administration / magasphere, aside from Hegseth, had to say around this. As you could tell, the people at the hearing did take it quite seriously. And as I said before and showed you with the chart, most people are. The problem is the Trump administration is not taking it seriously. Certain MAGA media personalities are split on it. Some are trying to play it off. It's not a big deal. And I'm going to go into those now. And before I get into those, I would say my personal opinion of it is yes, Pete Hegseth absolutely should resign. No question. I actually did a video on him on this channel during his confirmation hearing. And the main reason I did a video on him, and I didn't end up doing it on anybody else, although I probably could have done one on Gabbard, and I was going to do one on Kash Patel, but his was actually relatively uneventful. But Pete Hegseth was highly unqualified, and he had very questionable things in his statements and background prior to getting the position. Jumping back in quick, I just want to say, so when I mentioned, and some of these people mentioned that like the laws or the acts or the regulations or the executive orders that were broken, I just want to list a few right now with this chat. So we have a mishandling of national defense information, known as the Espionage Act, unauthorized disclosure of classified information, violation of OPSEC regulations, operational security, violation of the Presidential Records Act. That's with the using the signal, which it deleted the chats, which Mike Waltz, I guess I didn't talk about it. He did set the chats to delete after 4 weeks. Violation of the breach of executive order on classified information. Okay, so that's at least 5 that are known regulations, acts, orders, laws, what have you, that was broken with this. But anyways, so I think Pete Hegseth should resign unquestionably, and I think Mike Waltz, who invited the journalists to the chat, who created the chat, who moved the chat, he should also resign unquestionably. He created it for government purposes on an app that isn't supposed to be for government purposes. It's for private phones, and things were discussed that shouldn't have been. Not only that, the people that he added weren't obviously double checked and vetted prior to further discussion taking place on the app. So in that case, yes, I think Mike Waltz also should resign. As for the others involved, I think it is unquestionable that they need to take accountability and say, yeah, it was wrong. They're going to be more careful. It was a mistake, what have you. But they could easily throw Pete under the bus and say, I didn't think that he was going to discuss specific military strategy and timings with it, right? So they could kind of get out of it. Problem with the hearing is we didn't really hear that much from Radcliffe during this, a lot from Gabbard. But basically, Radcliffe and Gabbard lied multiple times on, this is day 2, like I said. They lied multiple times on day 1. Or they didn't recall, I should say, on day 1, and then they got called out on it on day 2, and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess that did happen, basically. So if you want to go on the perjury route, that would also put Tulsi Gabbard and Radcliffe probably should resign or be fired as well for lying under oath or plain exceptionally dumb, which means they're too incompetent to do their job anyways if they can't remember simple things, simple rules, simple regulations from the departments that they head up. They're either not qualified for stupidity or they're not qualified because they lied. Um, so I guess you could throw those two in as well, just because of how poorly they did and how bad their answers were during the hearings. Um, Anyways, moving on to some of the excuses, all right? This is what we're getting into now. This is why I said that number is going to go down, because some people are actually going to believe this stupid shit. All right, here we go.
So, why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed, things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter?
So here it is again. Attacking the reporter, not taking accountability. The reporter did not ask to be in this group. He reported to them after he got the information that he's like, oh, I shouldn't be in this group. Let them know. The only thing he did is report on the fact that there was a massive failure of this administration. It doesn't matter what political party he's for. Like I said, if you don't trust him and you don't like what he says, that's extra reason to make sure that he's not in the group. But he got in, despite all these people being intelligence leaders and national security leaders. And she's saying you should trust Pete Hegseth because he's fought before, which, by the way, he was the least qualified Secretary of Defense of all time. And this is coming from the party that told you, don't trust the doctors for some of their advice. Don't trust the climate scientists in regard to climate. They've done nothing but tell you not to trust experts for the last 9 years. But now you should trust the Secretary of Defense, who is the one who fucked up the biggest. You should trust him because he is the Secretary of Defense and has fought before. That's insanity. It is literally insanity. And there are people that are going to hear this propaganda. And they're going to be like, oh, yeah, she's right. That sounds totally great, right? No, it's stupid. Okay? Accountability. It goes both ways. Both parties need to accept accountability. Moving on. Here's Fox News. I don't even know if I need to play this one. It's so fucking stupid. Sorry for the language. But we've all texted the wrong person before.
You're adding people and you accidentally add the wrong person. All of a sudden, your Aunt Mary knows all your raunchy plans for the bachelor party. Well, that kind of happened today with the Trump administration. Mike.
Oh, yeah, they just accidentally added this journalist who is left-wing to a group with private government stuff on an app that they're not supposed to have private government stuff on. Oh, whoopsie-daisy, and now let's just post military info on it. Dumb. Dumb. Donald Trump Jr. Trump, little Trumper himself. Why doesn't Jeffrey Goldberg disclose to readers in his stories that he's also a registered Democrat? I'm pretty sure they know that. His wife also worked for Hillary Clinton and has donated nearly $25,000 to Democrats. And I don't even need to respond to this because this guy kind of just nailed it. So the Trump administration is talking about classified information on a commercial app on their private phones, and they added a registered Democrat to the conversation without noticing, and you blame the Democrat. You blame the registered Democrat. Nice job. Yeah, it's that dumb. It's that insane. This strategy is stupid. It's so stupid. You have Hegseth take responsibility for it. Resign. Sure, they like him. There's stuff they want from him. It's a monumental fuck up. Okay? Or at the very least, you take responsibility and try to say it'll never happen again. You know, this is our fault. Didn't realize, that I couldn't do that. Something. Should resign. But no matter what, the way they're going about it, dumb. And now let's just get to, the brain-melting insanity. Okay? Here we go. Marjorie Taylor Greene's great for brain-melting insanity.
Yep. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary...
What country are you? Wait, what country are you from?
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay,
And you, no. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care
no,
about
no,
American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care
No,
about
by migrants. No, do you care? Okay, you're done.
Do you care about
not,
American lives being put at risk?
You know what? I don't
about
care.
service members fighting for your country.
I don't care about your
vice
fake news.
president
Do you have a
and your
relevant
defense
question?
secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asked.
Boom! Boom! I'm an American journalist, and I want you to answer her question. The insanity for her to just hear the lady's accent or see her credentials and say she's not going to answer an important question because she's from Europe. Like, that's how insane this Trump administration is. They care more about hating on our allies and having this "we are better than you" attitude without giving any respect to other people, and trying to punish them because they think somehow it benefits us, when I assure you it doesn't. If you've watched my other videos, you know that. Globalization is a necessity in this day and age, and even if you don't want to be close allies when it comes to globalization, you need to maintain at least like a neutral, a working relationship, I should say, with, other countries. It's called foreign policy. It's an important thing to have, decent foreign policy instead of just hate on people, especially when it's the United Kingdom, who is actually one of our closest allies, and we really haven't done that much shitting on them. But, it's Marge Green. She just wants to be upset about it. So yeah, I mean, that kind of sums this up. I know it's a long video, but I mean, there was a lot to go through, especially when I play that many clips. And like I said, it's important. It's going to be interesting to see what more happens from this. It's probably not going to be enough to justify another video, but maybe I'll tweet about it or just comment on it in another video or something. But hopefully the fallout of this does at least lead to some resignations and lead to some accountability, because this is a massive failure of the administration and these heads of these departments in the U.S. government when it comes to national security. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. I have some other videos in the works that I'm pretty excited about. I'm going to try and get some videos out that are more original content and less covering the news. But yeah, look forward to those, and hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you're on the side of sanity in regards to this, no matter where you line up politically. See you next time.